Aside from a few dents and holes, this baby can still fly.
If we can find more green eco fuel, and if I can repair the power cells the pirates shot.
What?
While I work on that, why don't you boys go scout around and see what you can find?
What? With all those crazy trigger-fingered, fashionably dressed pirates running around? No way.
I'm sure you'll manage. But Jack, you can't transform anymore.
I know. Something's wrong.
If you can find some green eco, I'll have everything ready when you get back. You might need this. It's a fighting staff I've put together. You can even attach gun mods, if we can find any out here.
Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier was released in 2009 for both the PSP and the PlayStation 2, and is the last of the High Impact Games PSP trilogy. At least, that's what I call it. This game takes everything High Impact Games had learned with Ratchet & Clank Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank and puts it all together into a massive open world that feels like a proper continuation of Jak 3. The story is a bit more convoluted in this one and features more dark eco, Kiara getting kidnapped, and much more. Eventually things fall into place, but it doesn't feel nearly as well thought out or planned as the original PlayStation 2 trilogy. I should also mention that this game has been completely lost to time. 7 years after its release and almost no one knows of its existence, which is quite sad considering it is a very fun and well-made game. The core gameplay remains largely intact since the last time we've seen our heroes in Jak 3. They traverse a nice open world picking up missions, although the number of missions they have isn't nearly as diverse as the ones featured in Jak 3. There are tons of action and gunplay elements once on a mission, but now you can also expect a lot of spaceship dogfighting, which is really unique and adds a nice layer of freshness to the tried and true gameplay. Gameplay has been greatly refined from the 2 Ratchet & Clank games that High Impact Games worked on before this particular game. Jak's gun staff, for example, will automatically target specific enemies and the camera is semi-locked behind your character. This means it's much smoother as you play the game. And yes, you can still use the L and R buttons in order to reposition to your desired view. However, the game does a really good job of making it so that you don't really need to constantly be worrying about the camera. That said, in arena-style areas, it can certainly get a little troublesome to keep the camera exactly where you want it. And this is evident from the moment you step into the practice shooting range you'll see in the video. There are civilian targets that you don't want to hit, but given the camera and auto-targeting system, that can be much easier said than done. This is largely due to hardware limitations of the PSP, what with it not having a second analog stick, but it is extremely impressive what High Impact Games were able to achieve here. As with the rest of the series, eco plays a large part in the gameplay and puzzle solving. You can amass quite an arsenal of eco powers, which allow you to do a wide assortment of awesome things, from mixing up combat and creating stylish melee combos on enemies, to helping navigate some of the more challenging and complex puzzles in the game. The ramp up in difficulty is also handled quite well, with puzzles in combat becoming more and more challenging as you unlock more and more skills. The air combat sections are some of my favorite, as not only do you have a diverse number of side missions that require you to do all manner of fighting, tracking, etc., but eventually you'll also be able to launch Daxter onto enemy crafts where he can perform a little mini-game of sorts in order to help you take down enemy ships. Another new gameplay element is that of Dark Daxter, which is interesting, although a bit repetitive. Daxter occasionally falls into dark eco pits and then has to navigate sewers in order to get out. The sewers are a combination of light combat and puzzles where you have to defeat enemies while avoiding electrical panels and other hazards. Daxter himself transforms into a beast that's part Incredible Hulk and part Tasmanian Devil. The whole game comes together in such a way that I am still surprised this game was as overlooked as it was back in the day. This is a really fun game to play, even if it isn't quite up to par with the rest of the series. Given the hardware the game was made on, this is quite an accomplishment. People have been asking for a new Jak and Daxter game for quite a long time now, and yes, this didn't have the production budget that Naughty Dog would have had, but it remains a fun and interesting PSP game. The PlayStation 2 version certainly plays better thanks to the inclusion of a second analog stick, but it isn't as impressive as this version in terms of what the developer was able to do in the audiovisual presentation. We always compare the PS2 port to the original trilogy on the PS2 itself, but here the game was in a league all of its own. It's a beautiful game, sounds great, and is worth your time and money. The UMD can be had for around $15 or so, and it's available on the PlayStation Network for $15 as well. And it's compatible with the PlayStation Vita, which is great. People have asked for Jak 4, and honestly, I think this is the closest you're ever going to get to one, so why not check it out? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have concluded our look at the 3 PlayStation Portable games that High Impact Games developed. Join us next week as we have another review coming up for you.